Who's to say it's going to be a super dark game, right? Well, with the title like Tears of the Kingdom, I'm inclined to think our initial impression, the one we all had after the first trailer, might have been closer to the mark than we realised. Looking back, I can't think of a Zelda title that has been more clear in its conviction on what emotion the player can expect coming into the game. Ocarina of Time, links to the past between worlds, Wind Waker, none of these come close. Maybe the closest is Twilight Princess, implying a tone darker than those before it, but Tears of the Kingdom sounds deliberate, and if you weren't quite convinced by that opener, well, let's have a quick reminder of the last time we saw Princess Zelda. Along with the new trailer and footage, we also got the coveted box art that is going to accompany Tears of the Kingdom. Now, similar to Breath of the Wild, we have a beautifully painted design featuring Link atop one of the Sky Islands looking down across Hyrule, ready to tackle his next big adventure. This piece also provided clarification on details we hadn't seen or were maybe altered from the previous trailers. In particular, we can see a massive flare of Malice coming out of Death Mountain, the home of the Gorons, and a tornado-like formation further out to the west of the map. It's impossible to tell with this picture and taking the alliteration of previous artwork into mind, but best guess suggests this tornado could be located close to Rito Village, heading towards the Hebra region. One major location missing from both the artwork and trailer is the Great Deku Tree, and Korok Forest for that matter, but as I previously mentioned, I'd almost bet money that we're provided the best clue as to the location of the missing icon right here, as we see Link climbing up this massive tree root. Based on what we see of the Sky Island so far, a tree of that distinction would be unusual to say the least, and extrapolating the size of the roots would tend to indicate it's either related to the Great Deku Tree itself, or something equally massive in stature. Now, assuming we're correct about these observations, it would mean that we have the Spirit of Earth, the Great Deku Tree, launched into the sky away from its seat of power. Meanwhile, over in Death Mountain, Malice tendrils would make this location practically uninhabitable for the peaceful Gorons. And to the west, a tremendous tornado dominating the skies would be in direct opposition to the Rito, an avian race who only just managed to regain the skies from divine beast Varmedo. But adding to this new world order is something I mentioned in my last video, something we haven't seen so far in the trailers, but makes more sense when the situation is investigated further. In that video I theorised that Zora's domain, particularly the East Reservoir Lake, was built around 10,000 years ago, at the same time as the calamity depicted in the tapestry in a joint effort between the King of Hyrule and the Zora people. I went further to point out that Zelda mentions her next port of call to be that very location, prompted by reports that Divine Beast Varuda had stopped working. Adding to that concept art of the location, the centricity of luminous stones similar to that of the first trailer, and other factors all seem to suggest this place to be significant, and potentially the place we may find the entrance to where a buried Ganon lay in wait.
Hello there, this is future GameSmiths doing the editing, and look what we've got here. Confirmation that there was a planned dungeon in Zora's domain there, with their entrance being the waterfall. So yeah, exciting. It's confirmation. Love it.
My belief that in their journey to this area and around the time Link and Zelda would make their way underground, that the awakening of Ganon or another such event will result in a breach of the reservoir dam and a flooding of epic proportions for Zora's domain, as well as further down into the surrounding areas. The logic behind this claim is simple and answers one of the more fundamental questions players have had since the sequel was first announced. How do you make the game, which uses the same map as Breath of the Wild, feel different? You have two answers already. The Sky Islands and caves have already been introduced as changes to the landscape we experienced in Breath of the Wild, but here, with Zora's domain and a flood level crisis, we could potentially expect a third layer of change. Sections now underwater opening up opportunities for further exploration, but also to open up previously hidden areas of the map and maybe even cave systems by fundamentally altering the topography of well-known locations to make them new and fresh. This concept is almost hinted at in the stone monuments that explain how flooding of the areas occurred nearly every 10 years prior to the construction of the reservoir, and this event, should it come to pass, would provide the fourth known obstacle for the inhabitants of Hyrule, that being the upheaval of the skies for the Korok, displacement from the mountains for the Gorons, grounding from the skies for the Rito, and finally, flooding for the Zora, potentially wiping out their spectacular home in Zora's domain. While it's still a theory, it's compelling to consider, and if true, represents a dark day in the future of Hyrule as we witness the New World Order come to pass. Malice 2.0. I mentioned my thoughts on Malice in a previous video, so if you've missed that one, I'll leave a link in the description. Malice could almost be described as liquid hatred. Ill feelings and anger and resentment manifest in a viscous formation that, over the course of the Zelda titles, appears to have grown stronger and evolved to the point it almost appears sentient in Breath of the Wild. I mean, it's growing eyes and mouth out of its own volition, miles away from its host and cognizant of the events happening around it. I like to think of it as that weird goop you see in Ghostbusters 2, but much more alive. In the trailers, we see the velocity, tone, and movement of Malice in Tears of the Kingdom is next level. Flails out with tendrils in an aggressive push, showing no sign of abatement nor weariness. The substance is so plentiful, it appears to single-handedly lift the entirety of the castle and surrounding structures clean into the skies, as well as streaming out of the top of Death Mountain, almost commanding the nearby skyline and mouth of the volcano in a fierce display of domination. I want to try and put this into perspective. When we played Breath of the Wild, the only moving Malice we really had to worry about was the Blights, who formed a better part of the major boss fights in the game. Here, we could be facing a threat that is no longer mild nor stationary. It's more aggressive, more capable, and that can only suggest it will be more destructive and more deadly when it comes to encounters in Tears of the Kingdom. And touching on something I did cover in that video, when Ganon bursts to life in the first trailer with those yellowish eyes surrounded by a red tone, I don't see old school Ganon anywhere other than in the shell of the being possessed by a much darker force. As to who that is, you might ask, well, there are a few candidates that range from the biggest bad of them all, Demise, to other villains in the series like Zant, Vati, and even Malladus. But do you think it's Ganon or someone else entirely? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, so please let me know. Link's corruption. Since before I did my What If Link is Dying video, I've harboured a bad feeling about this new arm and the features and mechanics that coincide with it. Besides the fact that the arm is clearly not Link's, unless his nail trimming regime has gone out of the window, his expression when the hand joins with him is not the typical hero happy-go-lucky silent time happy face you'd expect. He looks pained, and we've seen similar effects when Ganon possessed Zelda and Twilight Princess, with the same dark markings sprawling across her figure, almost branded in a way by the possession, the effect of Ganon usurping her body in the fight against Link. Another thing to note is even in the life-size model of Link shown in Nintendo Live in Tokyo, Japan, we see Link bracing this arm with his other, suggesting the usage of the powers comes with a punch at the very least. Further supporting this is early game concept art, something that immediately came up when we first saw the trailer highlighting the connection between concepts for Breath of the Wild and the utilization of those concepts in Tears of the Kingdom. But if we examine this concept art further, we can notice it also shows similar designs of the dragon shield in the second trailer, and even the half-size Master Sword. That said, should we simply ignore the corruption that appears to have spread much further in this image, seemingly to include his leg and elements of the face? Whilst we haven't seen anything to this degree yet revealed in the trailers today, it doesn't mean it won't feature in the game at all. We've seen barely a snippet of what's in store to come in May 2023. And for me, this concept art, combined with the possessive nature of this entity on Link, suggests to me, personally, that the hand is not exactly the friendly fee or companion type character many assume it to be. My suspect from day one is that that hand belongs to someone we should be wary of in the very least, with my main suspect being Ganon. To quote the great Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And to my mind, that arm is more Venom than Peter Parker. In closing out the video, I also wanted to raise the importance of story and how it is highlighted as a criticism in Breath of the Wild. Now, Nintendo are known for taking on fan feedback, and whilst I personally love the story elements within Breath of the Wild, particularly the environmental and passive threads weaved seamlessly into the world, others have been more vocal in showing their disappointment, which leads me to believe Nintendo will focus on making this a story to remember. In fact, my prediction is that the story they are aiming to do with Tears of the Kingdom will be similar to what Ocarina of Time did for the generation before it, to elevate the medium with a mature story that provides not only motivation and compelling engagement, but also themes to reflect on and grow up with. I'm constantly surprised when I hear how Nintendo are underestimated when it comes to game development, particularly following Breath of the Wild. The last title proved how the development team were prepared to shake up the formula and strike out a new frontier that made their game, featured on a less powerful machine than those of its rivals, stand head and shoulders above in terms of what it was able to accomplish. For this reason and so many others, we should expect the unexpected and think differently if we hope to understand what is coming our way. It won't be Breath of the Wild, it'll be different, and it will challenge what you think you know. This company has single-handedly saved an industry on the verge of decline at least twice in my lifetime. Combined with one of the greatest IPs in gaming, well, I'm bracing myself for something truly special when the game arrives next year. A quick shout out to Arcade's Archives, who added to my suggestion about the spirals in the last video being used for fast travel. In their comment they said, "You will note that a lot of the green swelling stones are near stables, so it does make sense that they'll likely serve as fast travel gates. As every stable had a shrine nearby, and since there also appears to be a new stable near the Castletown ruins, it makes sense that there'd be one there as well. Thanks Arcade's Archives, appreciate the addition." Also, another comment came through from Tanika Nuva, who added to the theory about Zora's domain by saying, "So I noticed that in the cutscene when Varuda aims at Ganon, you see Ruda sink into the lake and then it emerges out of the Ritala River before climbing up the mountain to take aim, implying that there's an underwater tunnel from the lake to the river. So you might be onto something with this theory." Thanks to Tanika Nuva, I really appreciate that input, and thanks to everyone who has been providing some absolutely stellar ideas and theories of their own in the comments and on Discord, as well as the general support, which is nothing short of overwhelming. Really hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. Do you think Tears of the Kingdom will up the ante to be the darkest Zelda title to date? I mentioned the idea that we could see a flood, but does that theory hold water? What do you think might happen in the Gerudo Desert or even Lurelin Village? Regardless of where you might be thinking, I'd love to read more in the comments. If you want to stay up to date on the latest videos, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell if you want to be notified. That's it for me today, so as always, please stay safe. I'll see you next time here on GameSmiths.